Hello, my friends. This is John Henry Weston for LifeSite News, bringing you breaking news from the Vatican, where the Pope has just released a new encyclical called Dilexit Nos. He loved us. Now, this is astonishing because it is something that is quite orthodox. It is something that harkens back to the old teaching of the Church. In fact, I think it's best summarized by a tweet from our friend Deacon Nick Donnelly over in England. Here's what he said this morning about it. What's amazing about the encyclical letter Dilexit Nos, it doesn't mention synodality once. It doesn't refer to the touchstone of his pontificate Amoris Laetitia. It refers to Pope John Paul II 12 times. Amazingly, it refers to Pope Pius VI, Pius XI, Pius XII, and Leo XIII. This document, he says, reads like no other document issued over the past 12 years, end quote. It is very interesting indeed that this document comes now from Pope Francis, something that is rather unique in his pontificate. I would say there was others that were also quite strongly traditional, for instance, his document on St. Therese. But there is something here to note. You can go read the full write-up and analysis on the encyclical itself over at LifeSite News from LifeSite's News Rome correspondent Michael Haynes. But there's something to note here. During the last 11 years of his pontificate, going into the 12th year now, Pope Francis has been very consistent in what some people might call speaking out of both sides of his mouth, saying something that is very strongly good and right, and then something that is very strongly erroneous, some might say heretical, or even apostasy. I'll give you an example, a very good example that happened all at once so that it's easily seen. During his pontificate, he talked about abortion. Once he used very strong language. He said, abortion is not only wrong, it's a crime. And I hate to tell you, but many pro-life groups ran with that. The very next line he said this, but contraception is a lesser evil. And he went on to say, basically, and even confirmed by the Vatican, to say that contraception is okay to use in grave circumstances, which of course is a heresy, a total departure from Church's teaching, which teaches that contraception is intrinsically evil, can never be used under any circumstances. So there was a huge difficulty in what he said there and juxtaposing what he said that was good and right about abortion being not only wrong, it's a crime, but then following up. And so we've seen with other good statements and writings from the Pope, which he has issued, they often will come either in response to something really bad or as a prelude to something really bad. So, for instance, he just came off of getting very heavily criticized for saying that all religions are a path to God, confirming it again, that saying that God willed all different these diversity of religions. He 3 times affirmed that amidst very heavy criticism by cardinals and bishops. Bishop Schneider came out and said, he's gone against the whole gospel. And remember, in saying these things, it's a very severe condemnation because St. Paul teaches, if I or an angel from heaven were to come and give you a different gospel, let him be anathema, let him be accursed. So is it something to repair? And I mean, this document is a very long document. It obviously wasn't written just now. It was in preparation. In fact, it was first to be released in September, but it was held. Was it held in order to prop up something after getting roundly criticized for his comments that are so controversial? Or is it a prelude to something else? Is something bad coming that we're going to reel from, but we have this to assure us that it's all fine? We don't know. One of the things we do know is that former popes have warned about people who play this game, particularly modernists. Modernists play a game of saying things that are true and good and holy and sound very, very Catholic, but then say error. Here's what various popes had to say. And I'm going to quote first from Pope St. Pius X, whose document Pascendi really related to the errors of the modernists. You got to listen carefully to this because this warns us over what perhaps Pope Francis is in fact doing. He says, this is from the encyclical Pascendi, The modernists, as they are commonly and rightly called, employ a very clever artifice, namely to present their doctrines without order and systematic arrangement into one whole, scattered and disjointed one from another, so as to appear to be in doubt and uncertainty while they are in reality firm and steadfast. He continues, in the writings and addresses, they seem not unfrequently to advocate now one doctrine, now another, so that one would be disposed to regard them as vague and doubtful. Sound familiar? Pope Pius X continues, but there is a reason for this, and it is to be found in their ideas as to the mutual separation of science and faith. Hence, in their books, you find some things which might well be expressed by a Catholic, but in the next page, you find other things which might have been dictated by a rationalist. So therefore, warning against people who do this, say some Catholic things and say some things that are not Catholic at all. And similarly, Leo XIII, in his encyclical Satis Cognitum, says this, and again it pertains, and I quote, "The Church, founded on these principles and mindful of her office, has done nothing with greater zeal and endeavor than she has displayed in guarding the integrity of the faith. Hence, she regarded as rebels and expelled from the ranks of her children all who held beliefs on any point of doctrine different from her own." Pope Leo XIII continues, and I quote, "There can be nothing more dangerous than those heretics who admit nearly the whole cycle of doctrine, and yet, by one word, as with a drop of poison, infect the real and simple faith taught by our Lord and handed down by apostolic tradition." That's so important. Let me read it again. There can be nothing more dangerous than those heretics who admit to nearly the whole cycle of doctrine, and yet by one word, as with a drop of poison, infect the real and simple faith taught by our Lord and handed down by apostolic tradition. And he continues, "The practice of the Church has always been the same, as is shown by the unanimous teaching of the Fathers, who were want to hold as outside the Catholic communion and alien to the Church whoever would recede in the least degree from any point of doctrine proposed by her authoritative magisterium," end quote. So, what are we seeing here? Are we seeing this as a move to either repair a damage or as a prelude to something coming? I always think of it as that prelude because I wince whenever I see something good. But let's not forget, too, we're still praying for the conversion of Pope Francis. Maybe he'll see in the Sacred Heart something or whatever that might lead him to repair his ways, which have been heretical, which has caused great scandal in the Church. He's left us a hint, though. In the end of his own encyclical, he points back to his other one, Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti, both of which were filled with heresies and a real problem for the Church. So let's indeed pray for the conversion of Pope Francis, but let's be warned by Pope Pius X and Pope Leo XIII about the errors of modernists and how they use this tactic of really good things mixed with the little poison that contaminates the whole thing. For LifeSite News, John Henry Weston, may God bless you.